Welcome back. In today's video I'm going to do something a little different. I've been experimenting with the Oneiroi incredible module from Befaco, and I wanted to put it through a couple of different sound design experiments. Thank you to Befaco, of course, for sending this module to me to make the video. It was really appreciated. I just figured I'd play it in different scenarios, try different ideas with it. Let's see what we got as a result. What I'm doing now is just taking a simple melody from Pony VCO, feeding it into the input. I've just turned on the looper. Now the looper is an integral part of the sound design on Oneiroi. As you can see, you can go forwards and backwards, and you can go up to double speed in both directions. Just using a very simple drum beat, using the Bug Crack app on Ornament and Crime just to keep a little bit of a rhythm going. Now there's also a super saw oscillator and a sine oscillator in Oneiroi, which I'm bringing in here. And these faders are very playable. It's a really excellent tool for sound design and for experimenting and crafting, sculpting sounds. Relative levels of each of the stages, the input source, the looper, the super saw, or the sine, can all be adjusted with the faders. And the same on the right, the sound processing elements. There's a filter, resonator, echo delay, and this crazy ambient wash, which I just love actually. Here I've just brought up the super saw and I'm sequencing it using just some CV just to create a bit of movement in the background there. You can adjust the unison and the G-tune amount as well of the saw. This knob for the ambience is really interesting. It does so much more than just simply change the decay of the ambience. It actually kind of changes the whole tone of it as well. Space-time. So you see the general idea. It's just such a playable module. Of course, you can keep recording and it gets real wonky with things. For example, if we start to modulate using an internal modulator, we can actually get into real wonky beats because you can route the internal modulation to all different sources, or destinations, I should say, internally. Different modulation curves there you see are in the outer ring on the lower knob there, and you can set the speed on the modulation depth as well. And then you go backwards and it starts getting real fun. Now I've just reversed the looper. Double speed reverse combined with the same melody playing forwards through all of the processing elements. It just gets wild. That's what the dry signal would sound like without the ambience on the end. Let's look at using the looper as a sort of a sound design tool, a way to actually build and layer soundscapes from snippets of recordings. What I've done here is I've captured some pre-existing sounds from what we were playing previously into the looper. And I'm just manipulating all the different parameters, the filter, and all of the other things that you can change here. For example, the modulation on the looper position and speed. And this is the nice thing here. In the Oneiroi, you hear how the modulation changes the looper position, but all of the effects at the end are still working. They still actually affect the audio. By pressing the mod amount button, you're able to change the modulation destination, the speed, and the type of the modulation, and of course, the level of modulation you apply. Here I'm just playing around with the supersaw, but in wavetable mode. And what it does is it uses the contents of the looper buffer as a wavetable. Now the twist of the space-time takes us back in time. I love the effect this has. This is one of my favourite effects on Oneiroi, I should say. Just get lost doing this. I just spent ages just playing around. Now it also has a resonator built in. The resonator is triggered by the incoming audio samples or what comes out of the looper. So all I'm doing here is sending in drum samples, they're not samples, drum sounds from Bug Crack on Ornament and Crime. And they then trigger the resonator, and then feeding that through that reverb ambience to kind of smear it all together. Modulating the filter here as well a little bit. You can send in an external clock, and that's what I'm doing from Pam's Pro Workout there on channel 5, just to sync up the echo, which is like the delay loop at the end. It's a delay effect as against the looper effect at the start. The looper is a sound design tool, and the echo is more of an effect. Now what I'm doing is I'm re-recording that input. This time it's the kick drum, so I have the switch set to pre, and now the looper has got some new sounds in it. By default, that will overwrite the contents of the looper buffer, unless you have the sound on sound parameter, which you access via shift and start, which I'll play with later on in the video. Now the resonator can be played somewhat melodically by adjusting the tone knob. It doesn't track volt per octave per se, but if you send in, say, step voltages, you're able to actually create different resonant tones. That's actually quite fun to do. Now the random knob throws all sorts of randomization on different ranges of parameters that you can select there with that little slider switch, and then you just press shift with the random to undo those changes. This is a great example of how modulation really makes the difference with Oneiroi. We can also send drums into Oneiroi, and this time I'm going to use it with the resonator. I talked about this previously, and the resonator responds to the incoming audio, or indeed audio coming from the looper. And you notice what I'm doing here is I'm changing the pitch of the resonator using step CV from the Sequence X applet in Ornament and Crime. So in a way I can play it melodically, and the feedback control, the resonator feedback controls how much resonance there is. Now see, I've turned off the input. Now we don't hear the input, but we're still hearing the looper and the ambience play and the resonator responding to that. A fun way to use it. Alright, let's try some looping. Now what I've done is taken my bitbox, loaded up some samples, loop samples, and I'm going to play them into the input on Oneiroi. I'm just playing around. I just wanted to see what would happen if I did this. I have no idea if it'll work or not. But I think the Oneiroi would be a great performance effect to put into a performance case on a mixer as a sound effect. So the looper's just captured some of the incoming audio and I'm looping it in time, maybe a little slower. Play around with the speed here. Now I've got vocal samples coming in. Kind of a bass line. Using the resonator to kind of bring out some more sound on it. I find when you're adjusting the space-time on ambience, if you don't want it to come through, turn the decay down to 0, make a change, and then turn it back up. And you can glitch up the loop buffer by adjusting the length and the start. All right, let's go clubbing. So again, we're just going to use loop samples, but these are more house style samples. I've got the bass line and that synth lead going into the Oneiroi, and I have the drums coming out separately out of the bitbox. So we can bring up the effects on Oneiroi, create a build, layer up some texture. Again, using the resonator for that effect. Really good to use the resonator for this. Resonator can get a bit carried away. Don't let the feedback get out of control. There's the dry signal with just the resonator applied to it now. We can get the resonance dialed in just where we want it. That sounds good. Okay, bring up that ambience. Now, I have some modulation going on here from Ebb and LFO. So here we have it all patched up. What we've done is fill the looper. And when I slowed the looper down, reversed it, I'm going to use that as a kind of a rumble texture. That sample into the Oneiroi so I can process it. Bitbox is great for this, so there's 2 sets of stereo outputs. Again, we can do some fun things with the looper. Here I have a piano loop, house piano loop, that I'm sampling into it. Now we'll redirect it into the Oneiroi. Clear the buffer, the looper, and I'm going to turn on the sound on sound feature, which allows me to overdub into the buffer. You can already hear the looper picking up and reversing that piano sample. There we go, there's our texture drop. Now I have the looper still recording. I could probably turn this off. And now we have this texture that's actually formed from part of the music material. And we can just manipulate and twist it to our heart's content. And why not send the kick, that big beefy club kick? Let's send that in too and see what happens. Alright, last of all, let's just go wild. I'm going to take that piano house sample. We're just going to sample it into the looper and make some sort of terrifying nightmare track, like a soundtrack for a movie. The Nightclub of Terror. So I'm just adjusting the amount of modulation going on here now by Meb and LFO, which is also cross-modulating itself for fun. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. A little different, I know, from the ones I normally do, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing with Oneiroi, just coming up with all these ideas. Don't forget to leave me some questions and comments down below. Hit the old subscribe button to stay up to date. And thanks for watching.